Hello and welcome to the Creating a Workplace Culture of Dignity webinar. This is part of the New Paradigm Leadership Educational Series, and we are so happy that you have joined us today. My name is Robyn Short, and I'm the founder and CEO of Workplace Peace Institute. When I have webinars and when I have opportunities to share my ideas and my thoughts with people, I like to also offer you a little bit about myself so that you understand the lens that I bring to this work. So I'm an organization systems design consultant. What that means is that I help organizations build and sustain workplace cultures through the lens of understanding how organizational systems actually operate. I also support leaders in their development, specifically around workplace cultures of peace, workplace cultures of dignity, and all of the myriad skills that really go into helping us become what I think of as just more human humans. I also am a mediator and a peace building trainer. So much of the work that I do is really informed through conflict resolution and helping individuals inside of organizations build relationships that are really grounded in basic human needs and dignity. I also am a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging consultant. And ultimately, what I really think of my work is about is supporting people in actualizing their individual human potential, really specifically in the workplace. So today we're going to talk about dignity and creating a workplace culture of dignity. So I want to offer a definition of dignity to shape this, this content today and to shape our learning. And this definition comes from Donna Hicks, who is a researcher and scholar out of Harvard, who is really the leading authority on dignity as it relates to scholarly research. So dignity is our inherent worth and value as human beings. Dignity, therefore, is a birthright. It's something that we have. We have worth and we have value because we're human, because we're sentient beings. And so dignity differs from respect in that respect is the way that we treat each other. Respect is something that is earned based off of our behavior. So when I do the behaviors that inform my my desire to really truly honor another person's worth and value, when I am acting in such a way that the other person feels their worth and value being honored, I earn their respect. So dignity can't be stripped from me. It is core to who I am, but I can earn respect and I can lose respect. And my dignity can also be violated. And we're going to talk more about that in a few minutes. So many of us are experiencing chronic dignity violations in the workplace. This is leading to many of us failing to actually thrive in the workplace. And when we fail to thrive in the workplace, there is obviously a direct correlation to the organization's ability to actually thrive. So we want to be able to really prioritize a dignity lens in our work because it matters to us as humans, but it also matters to our ability to actually do the thing that we've come together to do in our workplaces. The thing that I find so fascinating about dignity is that all of us are vulnerable to having our dignity violated. And interestingly, dignity is so core to the human experience, and yet we don't inherently understand what it is. We don't inherently have language to describe it, and we don't inherently know how to honor dignity in others. Oftentimes, we don't even really know how to honor our own dignity. So it's an interesting paradox of the human experience that dignity is critical to who we are. It's critical to our ability to thrive. We inherently experience the suffering that comes when it's violated or when it's honored. And yet we don't really come into this human experience having any skills around how to honor dignity. And so I think that's one of our lessons as humans. And from my perspective, it's tremendously critical to our ability to actually come together and collaborate. So we as human beings spend about 81,396 hours in the workplace. We are in the workplace more often than we are doing any other activity other than sleeping. And in the world that we live in today, with all the adversity and difficulty and strife and stress, we may actually be working more than we're sleeping. So it's really critical that we develop the skills to be in what I think of as right relationship with each other, because we're with each other more often than not. And it's so critically important to our ability to thrive as human beings. So these statistics that I'm going to share with you come from the State of the Global Workforce, Gallup's 2022 report. 60% of Americans are actually emotionally detached from our work. So more than half of us are not feeling emotionally connected to our work, which means if I'm emotionally detached from something, it's not capable of bringing me joy. And I've probably emotionally detached myself as a coping mechanism. And when we aren't attached to something emotionally, there's no possible way we're actually able to give it what it deserves, right? So to give our work the work that it deserves in order for it to really be a representation of something we feel really tremendously proud of, and something that really represents the gift that we have to give to one another and to the world and to our organizations. 19% of us are just straight up miserable at work. And when you think about what happens to us when we experience actual misery, we're sad, we're depressed, we experience increased stress, which can lead to a whole host of actual illnesses. So it actually really matters that we're engaged and that we are experiencing joy in our work environments. Gallup asked survey participants to think back to the day before and answer these questions. So yesterday, did you experience worry in the workplace? 41% said that they did. Yesterday, did you experience stress in the workplace? 50% of research participants said that they did. Yesterday, did you experience anger in the workplace? 18% of the research participants said that they did. And 22% said that they experienced daily sadness. And that, honestly, these statistics kind of hit me really hard in my own heart, that I believe to the core of my being that as humans, we have a deep desire to create. We have a deep desire to contribute. We have a deep desire to do that together in community, and that we have not yet figured out a way to create communities where all of these inherent elements of the human experience actually lead to us feeling connection and joy, but rather are causing us to experience really antisocial emotions such as anger and worry and stress and sadness. And so we have work to do. Gallup also found that when organizations orient their performance management systems around basic human needs, then employees experience more engagement and they contribute at higher levels to the organization. So employee engagement is the conditions that exist when a person is enthusiastic about, excited about, and contributing to their work and to their workplace. And I believe that we all desire to do that. I think that the vast majority of us come into our workplaces with the hope and the desire to find community and to find a place to give the gifts that we have to give. And so when we experience our basic human needs in the workplace, we contribute because we have a desire to contribute. We benefit as human beings, we benefit as teams, and certainly the organization benefits in terms of being able to actually actualize the mission of the organization. So what are these basic human needs? I want to start talking about basic human needs through the lens of dignity. Dignity is, as we talked about, it's our inherent worth and value. And as I mentioned before, most of us don't actually have the language to describe the conditions that have to be in place in order for us to experience our inherent worth and value. So Donna Hicks, who I mentioned before, who is the scholar out of Harvard, has spent her career out in the field working with warring parties and working with, and when I mean warring parties, I mean people actually in war, and helping them to negotiate peace treaties. And what she found that's really central to all conflicts is the violation of, or the inability to actualize, a core set of needs. And what she found, and admits to, these are the 10 that she found to be most essential, but certainly aren't an exhaustive list of needs, is that we all have a deep inherent need to have our identity honored. We all have an inherent need to experience inclusion in the workplace. We all need to be acknowledged for the contributions that we make and to be recognized for what we have contributed to the organization or to whatever space that we're in terms of community. We need fairness. We need to experience impartiality in our processes and in our relationships. We need to be in relationships with one another where we extend the benefit of the doubt. What I find super interesting about the benefit of the doubt is that we all have a deep desire to have that experience. I know having benefit of the doubt not extended to me is one of the things that will really get me triggered. And yet we just, for some reason, most of us aren't conditioned to extend that to others. So we have a deep desire and a deep need to have the benefit of the doubt extended to us. We also need to have understanding. We need to be able to work independently and to experience autonomy. And when these things are met, we have a dignity need for accountability. I say when these things are met because when I work with organizations and when I hear organizations talking about accountability as a core value, and when I hear organizations talking about accountability in terms of struggles to get people to be accountable, it's always a red flag for me that accountability isn't safe, that people aren't assuming accountability because they aren't in a psychologically safe place for them to do that. So accountability is an essential element of dignity, and we need certain conditions to be in place in order for us to be able to actualize that. So I learned about Donna Hicks's work after I had been studying the basic human needs theory presented by John Burton and really a whole host of other scholars. So John Burton put together some basic human needs, and then over the course of maybe a decade, other conflict resolution and international relations scholars and practitioners began adding to these basic human needs. But the overarching premise is that basic human needs are not actually hierarchical, that we don't first seek shelter in order for us to then experience a need for belonging, in order for us to experience a need for love, in order for us to experience a need for actualization, but rather as humans, there are a core set of needs that we are in a perpetual state of seeking, and we need all of them. And we need all of them at all times. And so they are not hierarchical, but rather something that we are perpetually seeking. So I think that's important because if you think about that from the perspective of, I could be an unhoused person, but still have a deep need for psychological safety. I can be an unhoused person and still have a deep need for belonging. I can be a person without adequate nutrition and I still need love and self-esteem. So you can see how these things are in fact actually not hierarchical. We also have a deep need for self-fulfillment and for participation and for self-esteem. So as humans, we are continuously seeking all of these basic human needs. So I learned about John Burton's basic human needs theory, and it really just kind of lit my life up. I was like, oh, this is the most important work in the world, but there was something that was still missing. And then a student of mine actually introduced me to Donna Hicks's work on dignity, and it was the missing piece of the puzzle that I had been looking for. And I've really merged Donna Hicks's dignity model with John Burton's basic human needs model, because I think that the essential dignity is not a basic human need. It is core to what it means to be human. But the actualization of our dignity is, I believe, the most central basic human need that we have. And when our basic human needs are met, when our dignity needs are met, there's a correlation to our ability to actually actualize our basic human needs. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But what I want to present to you is that each of us as humans are moving around every area of our life, seeking to have all of these needs met. And we need to be able to center these needs in our work relationships. And we can think about this from a culture perspective, both in terms of, am I leading with basic human needs and dignity needs in my interpersonal relationships? Am I leading with basic human needs and dignity needs as it relates to the actual structure of the organization? So we're going to talk a little bit more about the nuances between those two. But what I do want you to really understand is that we absolutely must prioritize life-affirming workplace cultures and life-affirming practices that are grounded in human security and dignity in order for each of us to thrive in the workplace, in order for us to really flip on its head all of those statistics that I just showed you, and for us to begin to think about, yesterday, did I experience joy in the workplace? And we're close to 100%. Yesterday, did I experience my dignity in the workplace? And we're close to 100%, because that's where we are able to truly give the gifts that we want to be able to contribute to the organization. So I believe that we can do better, and I believe that we must do better, but we need to actually learn new things in order to do so. So I love this quote by Sean Dove: "There is no cavalry coming to save the day in our communities. We are the iconic leaders we've been waiting for. We're the curators of the change that we're seeking." So Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see in the world. And what I believe is that we need to be the leaders that we're looking for. And I believe that everyone is a leader. A leader is simply someone who has the ability to influence change. And as a human being, we're all actually doing that. And we're all actually either leading change in positive directions, or if we're really disengaged, we may be leading change in negative directions. But we all have the power and we all have the ability to influence change in our organizations. So when you look at this, this graphic, what I want you to see is a couple of things. One is, that's you over there on the far side of the circle. And here are all the people who are influenced by your behavior. So if you are an individual contributor, the people most impacted by your behavior are your teammates. And when you are in right relationship with them, it changes the way they're experiencing the workplace, and that creates a ripple effect out to the next layer. That changes the way they experience the workplace, and it creates a ripple effect out to the next layer. So one person has a huge ripple effect across an organization just by the way they're leading and by the way that they're in relationship with one another. You can also see this graphic from the perspective of this pawn over here on the left is the CEO. And the pawns right next to it in the red are maybe processes and policies and practices that are embedded in how we do business. And those processes and policies and practices influence the way executive leaders lead, which influences the way our middle management leads, which influences the way our individual contributors experience the workplace. So this can also be more structural. So I want to share this with you because I want to invite you to listen to this webinar through the lens of your own role. If you're the CEO, I want you listening in a certain way. If you're a senior leader, I want to ask you to listen through that lens. If you are middle management, listen through that lens. And if you're an individual contributor, listen through the lens of your role as a leader in the seat that you kind of occupy inside the organization. And really think about this through the lens of, I'm the Calvary that I've been waiting for. In our hierarchical society and in our hierarchical organizations, we've been very conditioned to look to people who have more institutional authority to be the change makers. And as these statistics that we looked at the very beginning showed us, we're continuously disappointed. So if we look to others to create the world that we want to live in, we're going to be constantly living in the world they're creating. But if we look to ourselves to create the world we want to live in, then we're going to actually begin to experience in the pockets of the world that we live in, a world that reflects our values. So let's listen through the lens of your own individual role. So in the research that we've done here at Workplace Institute and in the culture work that we do here at Workplace Peace Institute, we believe there's 5 critical elements of culture. Trust, the ability to have trusting relationships, the ability to exercise creativity in the workplace, the ability to actually contribute. We all have environmental needs, and then we have some specific needs around feedback. So just to ground this in some definitions, trust is the belief that the words and actions of one's leadership and coworkers will reliably align, and that workplace processes will produce results that are in the best interest of the organization's members, mission, and purposes. So trust exists when what we say aligns with what we do, and that we see that in our processes, and that we can trust that what's happening in the organization is in the best interest of employees and also is truly serving the mission and the purpose. Creativity is a process that begins with a genuine encounter with a business need that involves an intense absorption into an idea, a thought, or a desire. So no matter what seat you kind of occupy in an organization, no matter what role you're in, this desire to be creative, to be able to bring the resources, the wisdom, the expertise that you have, and to be able to be very deeply thoughtful about that to meet business needs. That's what we're here in the organization to do, regardless of where we are in the organization. From a contribution perspective, it's the ability to share one's intellectual and emotional resources, skills, and talents in support of the organization's mission and purpose. So when we come to our workplaces, we come because we have a desire to help amplify and actualize the mission of the organization. We have some needs as it relates to our environment. So this is the external criteria that's necessary for us to connect with one another and to do so in such a way that brings about our greatest potential in the workplace. So how is our environment supporting our needs for connection? And how is our environment supporting our ability to actually grow and develop together? And then we have a need for feedback. So these are going to be the feedback mechanisms that the organization has established that conveys to employees that their individual contributions are valued and that the organization is supporting the individual in their personal and professional growth. So when we think about culture development, these are the criteria that we're really examining. And here at Workplace Peace Institute, we're looking at this through the lens of how are people actualizing basic human needs and how are people actualizing their essential elements of dignity as it relates to their ability to trust, to create, to contribute in an environment where dignity is embedded into that system, and how is peace and dignity embedded into our feedback mechanisms. So we did some research to explore what really is essential for us to experience dignity in these elements. So first, let's take a look at trust. So what we found is that the single most important factor of cultivating trust in the workplace is creating an environment in which all voices are heard. Employees also need to experience equity. So that's fairness and impartiality in all aspects of their work. And then interestingly, they need to witness the same equity among coworkers across the organization. So in order for trust to really develop, grow, be fostered and sustained, people need to know that their voice is heard, that they can trust that when they speak, their colleagues and their leaders are listening, and that they're going to experience and witness fairness. So I think it makes perfect sense, but I think it's really interesting that I can be being treated fairly, but if I observe that another person is not being treated fairly, my own experience isn't enough to build trust. I have to be able to see that this is an experience that is being experienced in an equitable manner. So I asked you to think about this through the lens of of your role in the organization. And we're recording this webinar, and you'll be able to come back to this. So in order to really help you listen through the lens of your own role, I provided some journal prompts for you to come back to so that you have some exercises that you can come back to really be able to strengthen or deepen your understanding of these concepts and to apply some behaviors and actions to them. And so you can come back and do this individually, or you might want to have a team experience to bring your team together to watch this webinar and then work through some of these journal prompts, which could be team building discussion prompts. So in my current role, what actions and/or behaviors are going to need to be implemented to cultivate trust among my team members? And what behaviors do I need to adopt to ensure my team members experience fairness? So think about this through your own personal behaviors and areas where you can grow and develop in order to build and sustain trust in your teams and organizations. So let's take a look at creativity through the lens of embedding dignity into creativity. So we learned in our research that to experience creativity in the workplace, employees need to experience freedom, meaning they need independence and autonomy. They need to be able to experience their own intuition and their own intrinsic power, free of expectations to conform to process or to protocol. So if we think about this through a workplace culture perspective, some organizations have very rigid processes and very rigid protocols. And the rigidity of that process and protocol can cause some people to not experience freedom. It can cause them to shut down their intuition, and it can cause them to get into uncomfortable power dynamics, which then shuts their voice down. So ensuring that in our organizations, we have not created such stringent processes and protocols that we're actually unintentionally not allowing freedom to surface. Now, I say that not to say that processes and protocols are unimportant, because they are, and they're an important part of how culture is built. But there can be times where we have over-engineered something to the point that we're actually beginning to silence diverse perspectives. And that silencing of diverse perspectives has a direct correlation to people's inability to actually be creative in the work environment. And when I say creativity, I don't mean from an artistic perspective, I mean the ability to come and create. So some journal prompts. In my current role, how can I assert more independence and autonomy in my work? And what can I do to empower my team members to experience more independence and autonomy? So again, if you are a person in the organization who holds a lot of institutional and authoritative power, you're going to answer this in a particular way. And if you're an individual contributor with teammates that you are in, not in a power dynamic relationship with, there are still behaviors and ways that you can begin to exercise some independence and begin to empower independence with others. So be thinking about what this might look like for you. So looking at contribution through the lens of dignity, in order to contribute at their highest level, employees need to experience having their identity fully embraced so that they have the freedom to be fully present. People need the psychological safety to authentically self-express, and they need to be trusted to act autonomously. And they need a consistent and targeted feedback loop of acknowledgement to affirm that their contributions are valued. So in order to really contribute, and in our research, we were talking about this through the lens of creativity, critical thinking skills, being able to act on expertise. People needed to know that their identity is being fully embraced. So what that means is if I am a Black woman, I don't have to code switch. I don't have to assimilate to white cultural norms. I can be my full, authentic, culturally authentic self in the workplace. If I am a member of the LGBTQ community, I can come into the work environment and talk about my life with as much freedom as anyone else can. So one person who is a member of the LGBTQ community in our research was saying that when he was engaged and got married and went on his honeymoon and bought his first house, he was able to talk about all of those things with his colleagues with as much freedom and openness and transparency as his colleagues who were heterosexual. That allowed him to be fully present in his workplace. He didn't have to spend energy to make other people uncomfortable with his life or with himself or with who he is. That requires psychological safety, right? There has to be psychological safety in the workplace in order for me to be able to be fully present with all of who I am in my work environment. And we need to be able to have the trust from our colleagues and our leadership to work independently. But to work independently, we need our contributions to be acknowledged and to be recognized, because that communicates to us that we're doing the right thing. And when I know that I'm doing the right thing, I feel free to continue to do that, and I can work independently. So there's a pathway of contingencies that are important to exist in order for us to be able to fully contribute to the organization. So some journal prompts or some team building discussions. What elements of my identity are important for my colleagues to know about me and for my colleagues to be able to embrace and honor? And what behaviors are present when I experience this? So be able to identify the behaviors that are showing up, that are communicating to you that you are in fact being fully embraced and honored. What are those behaviors? And then what behaviors might you need to adopt to ensure that other people are experiencing this identity of being fully embraced? Continuing with the journal prompts or discussion prompts on contribution, what feedback loops support your ability to experience acknowledgement, and what feedback feedback loops can you implement to ensure that your teammates are acknowledged, to know that their contributions are valued? So again, you don't have to sit in a formal leadership role to participate in feedback loops with your colleagues to ensure that they're feeling valued. So then let's take a look at environmental needs. In order to contribute at their highest level, employees need a work environment that allows them to connect with workers in a meaningful way, while also allowing the space to work independently and autonomously. So this means that we need to work in an environment that has dedicated space for uninterrupted, quiet work and space for collaboration and fellowship. So we actually did this research the year before the pandemic. And when employees were talking about this organization that we did the case study around had created work from home days and collaboration days. And what employees had talked about was those work from home days really gave them that quiet time that they needed, but they also needed the times for fellowship. So as we're moving into this post-pandemic world, I think there's real opportunity for us to begin to reimagine what our environments look like for work and how we can meet these needs, instead of thinking about when will we bring people back to the office and what does that look like, framing it less about the office space and more about how will employees have opportunities for solitude and quiet work, and how will we have opportunities for fellowship, and then designing around those environmental needs instead of trying to fold the humans into the structure of the building itself. So when you think about this from journaling prompts and discussion prompts, how might you be intentional about using the resources that are available to you to create opportunities for connection with your coworkers? And what actions can you take to increase meaningful connections with colleagues? Something I've been thinking a lot about in this, as we're emerging out of the post-pandemic life, is the lost connections. We lost for several years, we lost our just connecting with one another in the hallway, and we actually filled that space. So not only did the connections go away, but the time for those connections went away. And I think we're going to need to be thinking about very seriously how we reclaim some of that time, because the ability to connect is so critically important for us to experience dignity in the workplace. We need to be in relationship with one another. And then lastly, looking at feedback through the lens of dignity. So people need to experience feedback mechanisms that ensure their individual contributions are valued and that the organization supports the individual in their personal and professional growth. So we need to be able, in a structured way, have feedback mechanisms that are designed specifically around the idea of how am I honoring worth and value, and how am I ensuring that my feedback loops are through the lens of actualizing these basic human needs that are so critical for us to thrive. So this can be done at a structural level, but it can also be done at an individual level. So for instance, I made a New Year's resolution for myself last year that every week I was going to send a thank you note to somebody. That caused me to be really intentional about thinking through my week and the people who had really made an impact or supported me in a way, and ensured that they knew. So there are things that we can do as individuals. We don't have to look to leaders to implement a feedback mechanism. So thinking about this from a journal prompt or for a team building discussion, what feedback mechanisms can you establish to support your colleagues' growth and development? And if you're thinking about this through the lens of just you as an individual, what are you willing to do? It takes effort, it takes time, but the effort and the time that we put into the growth and development of our colleagues comes back to us so much as it relates to relationship and our own the inherent reward that we experience when we're in relationship with people. So in our research, we looked at the feedback that we had received from all of the data around what it looks like to experience dignity from those 5 critical elements that are essential for culture. And then wanted to really understand what is the core dignity need that we all have in the workplace. And what our research found is that a core requirement of experiencing dignity in the workplace is having one's voice genuinely heard and the experience of having one's authentic self fully embraced. And this wasn't surprising to me because I have always known the tremendous power of simply being heard and the tremendous power of really genuinely being embraced. It reminds me of a job that I had, the last job that I had before I changed careers and went into conflict management, dispute resolution, and the work that I'm doing now. I was a member of a leadership team. I reported to the CEO. There were about 5 of us on the team. And the CEO in the 2 years that I worked there never one time said, "How was your weekend?" He and I had a standing Monday morning meeting, never once said, "How was your weekend?" Never asked me anything about my personal or private life. Did not know me as a multidimensional human being at all. And one time in one of our leadership team meetings, he said to the whole group, "I really think of you all as friends." And I didn't intend to, but I started laughing because I found it funny. And he looked at me and I said, "What's my dog's name?" Because if you know me at all, you know how much I love my dogs and you know my dog's name. He didn't even know I had a dog. So I share that story to say that having our voice heard, really being known, and having our identity fully embraced and honored is so critical to our ability to experience our inherent worth and value in the workplace. And there is a pathway of achieving that. So we know that having our voice heard is critical. We know that having our identity accepted is critical, but how do we get there? So in order to show up authentically and amplify one's voice, there must be psychological safety in the workplace. Employees, and especially employees who are members of historically oppressed groups, must experience their identity being fully embraced. The experience of having one's voice heard empowers employees to act independently and autonomously. And then when this behavior is acknowledged and affirmed, employees are motivated and engagement becomes self-perpetuating. So what does that look like visually? At its core, there must be psychological safety. There must be this ability to show up and contribute in such a way where I don't think there's going to be any forms of retribution or any forms of humiliation. And my identity is fully embraced. So I can be my full authentic self, and I can amplify my voice in such a way where I feel certain there won't be any form of retribution. This begins to develop a process of trust. And when it becomes affirmed enough that when my psychological safety, my identity being embraced, my ability to amplify my voice is affirmed enough, meaning I have earned, respect has been earned, my dignity has been honored on such a frequent basis that I trust it will continue to be so, I now can begin to act independently. And when all of these elements are consistent over time, this becomes self-perpetuating engagement. And I am enthusiastic about my work and my work life and my colleagues on an ongoing basis. And then the beautiful thing about that is when something happens, when a conflict surfaces, there has been enough psychological safety, enough of embracing of identity, enough consistency of amplifying my voice and trust building and independence that I just naturally extend the benefit of the doubt. And I think, oh gosh, I wonder what happened, instead of immediately going into a defensive posture. So I want to share a little bit of feedback from research participants to kind of just let you hear their voice as they were talking about this in the research study. So one research participant, as it relates to having her identity accepted, said, having my identity accepted fuels critical thinking because there are not insecurities taking up space in my mind. It quiets a lot of the internal noise and frees up space to create. It enables authenticity, and this leads to the experience of being valued, which increases trust, and then that increases motivation. So you can see how these essential elements of dignity begin to build on each other. One research participant talked about the importance of psychological safety. And he said that psychological safety is experienced by an appreciation of diversity of thought and experiencing my opinion being valued. When I experience psychological safety, I'm able to be creative. I can think and breathe in a space that's motivating. So you can see how critically important psychological safety is. Acknowledgement. So this research participant shared that when she receives acknowledgement, it helps her to feel safe. It builds trust. And when this comes from leadership, it supports my belief that the organization wants me to grow as a leader. It empowers me to trust feedback, and it makes collaboration feel comfortable. So you can see how important it is that we actually acknowledge our contributions that our colleagues are making in our workplaces. So recognition, when I receive recognition from leadership, it increases my trust in them, and it helps me to foster trust in the organization, even when the decisions the organization make are not always clear. Recognition empowers me to work independently and to experience autonomy. It provides the feedback necessary to experience the confidence to work independently. So I love that this research participant is talking about how when he receives recognition from leadership consistently, it builds the trust that's necessary for them to make decisions without him always having to know all the answers. So it begins to build a pathway for trust. One research participant shared that having her ideas honored and acted upon and being able to bring my full self to the workplace is what fairness looks like. Fairness empowers me to be more authentic, present, and participatory. When she experiences fairness, she feels content and free. So it's really critical that we are highly aware of what our basic human needs are. As humans, we have these needs. We have a visceral response when they've been violated, but we don't have, unless we have learned them and developed the skills around them, we don't actually know how to name them. And if I can't name something, I don't know how to go about actualizing it. So we need to be able to be advocates for our own basic human needs, and we need to be advocates for the basic human needs of others in the workplace. So there is a direct correlation between having our dignity met and our ability to experience our basic human needs. So I asked the research participants, when you experience these essential elements of dignity, which of these basic human needs are met? Then you can see that that self-esteem and personal fulfillment and belonging and love and security, all of these basic human needs that are so critical to our ability to thrive in the workplace have a direct correlation to psychological safety, having our identity met, fairness, acknowledgement, etc. So I just want to remind you of how critically important, no matter where you are in the organization, that you're being really intentional about embracing the identities of your colleagues that you are being really intentional about creating psychological safety, and that you're being really intentional about amplifying diverse points of view, and that you can do this yourself. You don't have to look to someone else to make this happen. These are things that you can consciously embed into every aspect of your life and every aspect of your work life. And when you do that, there will be an emergence of trust, and there will be an emergence of independence, and there will be an emergence of psychological safety. So I want to remind you that each of us are the cavalry that we've been waiting for. To help you really integrate dignity into all aspects of your life, I want to encourage you to read these two books by Donna Hicks. Dignity, Its Essential Role in Resolving Conflict was her first book, and then her second book was Leading with Dignity. These books changed my life. My entire organization would not exist had I not read these books. And so I hope that you will pick up a copy and begin to really integrate dignity into all aspects of your life. If you want to really grow your skills in the work of dignity, I want to highly encourage you to take our online leadership training course called Dignity Intelligence. This course is going to go into great depth about all of the components and elements of dignity and the competencies that you'll need to be able to develop as an individual and as a leader to be able to consistently actualize the essential elements of dignity, and the daily practices that you'll need to be able to put in place in order to develop these competencies. Another course that will support you in cultivating a workplace culture of leadership is the Mindful Leader course. This course will support you in growing your competencies around compassion, and to help you also develop competencies to be really, truly present as a leader in the workplace. And that presence is really important because, as I talked about, we don't inherently have the skills for honoring dignity and for honoring basic human needs. And it's really critical that we develop the skill to be fully present so that our own emotional distress doesn't get in the way of being present to others. And then we learned about the importance of trust in this work of creating a workplace culture of dignity. So I also want to encourage you to take a look at the Leading with Trust and Integrity course that we offer. All of these courses are online, they're self-paced, they're asynchronous, so you can go through these courses and do this learning and development at your own pace. So if you want to learn more, you can go to workplacepeaceinstitute.com/leadership academy and learn more about the Leadership Academy. And then I also want to invite you to come back next month and join us for a webinar about trauma-informed leadership. This is going to be taught by Dr. Betty Iglesias Snyder. We're living in a world where there is trauma everywhere, and there is stress everywhere. And I believe that we really owe it to ourselves and to our colleagues, if we want to live in a culture of dignity, that we're able to really show up for one another and have an understanding of what trauma is and what it looks like. So I invite you to come back next month and join us for that webinar. So thank you so much for being here. This webinar is being recorded. It will be on our website, and you will also receive an email if you registered with a link to come and view this. And we hope to see you next month. Thank you.